Hello everyone, my name's Kitetsu and welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to be talking about Soulbound, which is the new role-playing game for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Now I'm really excited about this. I think it's an amazing book. First of all, thank you so much to Cubicle7 for providing me with a copy of this to be able to talk about with you guys. Second thing I want to say about right from the offset is I am not an expert with role-playing games. I don't have that much experience with them at all. I've dabbled in Dungeons and Dragons. That's the only real role-playing game I have any kind of experience in. But even then, I haven't played a huge amount of it. I joined one of my friend's campaigns quite a long time ago now. And then a while later, I decided to buy the Mines of Fandelver starter set, the current Dungeons and Dragons starter set basically, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It's amazing. I became a dungeon master for that and ran the campaign that came with the set with my current wargaming group actually at the moment, the ones I play Warhammer with. But yeah, absolutely love it. I was quite skeptical about playing role-playing games to begin with, but when I ended up actually getting involved with one and playing it and then writing the campaign, running it myself, it's incredibly fun. And if you have never played a role-playing game, I would wholeheartedly suggest you get involved. It's a really good laugh, it's good fun. It's very important to have a good group of people to play with because, you know, having someone in the group who's not really interested in enjoying themselves or allowing anyone else to enjoy themselves can really ruin the experience. But yeah, it's great fun. If I was to describe the feeling of being a dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons, it is basically the most liberating feeling of having ultimate creative freedom to do whatever you could possibly ever want. It's like being a god of your own fantasy world where everything is exactly the way that you could ever want it to be. Why am I talking about Dungeons and Dragons so much? First of all, because I'm coming into Soulbound with not a huge amount of experience with role-playing games, but second of all, obviously the comparisons are going to be inevitable. Now, the only other sort of semi-disclaimer I want to say is that I'm loath to call this a full review because it's a 352 page book. I've only had it for a few days. I've been reading it, but I have by no means read everything in this book. I'm probably 2/3 of the way there to feeling comfortable to running a game, or at least playing in a game. I'm comfortable with the character creation, the basic mechanics of playing the game, and obviously for me, the setting and the storyline is not too much of an issue. But yeah, I think until you've spent maybe at least a good few gaming sessions playing this game, or even better, being the game master and running the session yourself, I would say that you'd be hard-pressed to call it a true review. Now, what I can say is what my feelings are so far from this book, and there are some things that I absolutely love about it. So I've written some notes down. Let me go through the list of some of the things I like. So straight away, if you go down to the lore section, which starts on, here we go, 161, the lore section is absolutely incredible. If you have never played Age of Sigmar, the tabletop game, or if you have but you don't really know what the storyline's all about, then this book will get you up to speed incredibly quickly. I know that they've credited some of the actual Games Workshop writers, so I assume they've been involved in writing the lore sections, but it's incredibly well written. It flows really well, and there are some very concise descriptions of exactly what's happening in the storyline of Age of Sigmar right now. My goodness, PDF files do run slowly on this computer. But here we go, Chapter 9, the Fiery History. It's kind of focused mostly on the realm of fire, but it tells you all about the coming of chaos. It tells you about how Sigmar creates the Stormcast Eternals and fights back. So the Realm Gate Wars, which is where first edition Age of Sigmar started. It runs you all the way through the Shaiish Necroquake. But yeah, basically, to cut a long story short, it gets you really up to date with everything that's happening. Now, the other thing I really love is it comes with this PDF map of the Great Parch, which is one of the major continents of the Realm of Fire. It's a really detailed map, and it shows you just how far the storyline has come in Age of Sigmar. if you think back when we started in first edition, this little region down here, the Igneous Delta and the Brimstone Peninsula, that was basically all that they had thought out for the Realm of Fire, and now that is like just a tiny little piece of this enormous continent. But that's the next thing that I think is incredible about this book. When you go through this section here, so we've got Life on the Great Parch, telling you all about what the days and nights are like, what work is like, what the temperature's like. Every aspect of life in that realm has been really thoroughly explored, but even better, it then goes through each region of the map. So at the moment it's looking at this bit over here, but it goes through more or less the entire thing, telling you which factions are dominant, what the power plays are, what the weather's like, which resources might be scarce. It's absolutely amazing. And if you really care about your Age of Sigmar lore, then I would say that this book is more or less worth it just for the description of the Realm of Fire. It's absolutely incredible, and it's starting to take on more of a Warhammer Fantasy Old World style feel, where instead of like in first edition where it was this really vague, sketchy, oh yeah, there's some kind of Realm of Fire, but we don't really know anything about it. Now it has a map, it has real locations, it's dotted with cities that are fun to explore. We've got the capital city more or less of all of Sigmar's realms, Hammerhal. We've got a kind of pirate themed dockyard city. We've got a floating city with flying ships. It's a pretty amazing place that they've decided to set this. And in actual fact, I'm really glad that of all of the realms they picked this one to set it in. Part of that is due to the diversity of the different settings we have. So you've got a realm that is essentially very hot and volcanic. You've got endless deserts of ash and lava, but then there are also forests. There are even green and fertile regions in the Great Parch, and then you can even find some icy tundras. So yeah, no two places are really going to be alike in this setting. So a great introduction to the lore, an amazing lore section in general. The artwork, I mean, I'll scroll through a few pages as I'm talking, but the artwork is absolutely astonishingly good. The entire book is actually just crammed full of artwork, and pretty much all of the artwork is brand new for this book. There are a small number of assets that have been recycled from Games Workshop publications, but for the most part this is all brand new and exciting stuff. Now the next thing I think is amazing is, as RPGs go, this is incredibly accessible. Now from the offset you have to understand that this is not trying to be Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I mean, it kind of is, but it's trying to give you a very different experience overall to Dungeons and Dragons. And it's also very definitely not trying to be Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition of the role-playing game. And actually, I think that's a really good thing. What it means is that if you want a really in-depth system that is absolutely amazing with the wealth of character creation options and depth, go and play Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition. If you want the ultimate role-playing game where you can literally do anything you could ever want to and the limit is your imagination, go and play Dungeons and Dragons. But if you want an amazingly accessible and easy to get into role-playing game where you just want to get into it, have fun, create your characters quite quickly, and then just start enjoying the world of Age of Sigmar, then this is totally for you. You have to kind of come into this game with a slightly different approach as you would with, say, Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game 4th edition or Dungeons and Dragons, and that is partly down to the way that the character creation works. If you were to look at fantasy roleplay, it has classes and careers. You can pick whatever race you want to start as, and then there are, my goodness, so many classes and careers. It's absolutely insane. You can be an apothecary, an engineer, a lawyer, a nun, a physician, a priest, a scholar, a wizard, an agitator, an artisan, a beggar, investigator, merchant, rat catcher, townsman, watchman, advisor, artist. Like, the list goes on and on and on. And those different careers are not tied to whatever species you want to be. So if I want to be a knight or a priest or a wizard or a beggar, but I was determined that I was going to be a human, then you can do it. The way that character creation works in this book is quite different. It's based around archetypes. Now, in general, the archetypes are locked to different species, or should I say the species are locked to the archetype. And what they've essentially done is they've just decided to pick pick various different models from some of the factions, and then those are the different things you can be. So for example, there are a few different characters you can be from the Ideneth. You could be a Tidecaster, or the first one I went to check out was the Caradron Overlords, where you can be an Aether Chemist. That's your first option, or you could be an Endrin Master, that's your second, or you can become a Sky Rigger in either the Endrin Rigger or Sky Warden format. So just for the Caradron Overlords, there are 3 different characters you can play as. When it comes to the Stormcast, you could be a Knight Azeroth, you could be a Knight Incantor, a Knight Questor, and yeah, basically there are 23 of these different characters from across a range of factions. So going back to the contents page, you can pick someone from either the Free Peoples, so a mixture of human and elf characters. You can be a couple of people from Daughters of Cain, Fireslayers, Ideneth Deepkin, Caradron Overlords, Stormcast Eternals, and Sylvaneth. So you can't, for example, pick a Sylvaneth and then decide that you are going to be a Knight Questor, for example. It's a very different system. That being said, there was still just enough depth for me to have an awful lot of fun creating my character. There's a new mechanic in this book, which the whole title Soulbound comes from, where with your party of people you can all be connected together, and the mechanics for Soulfire and Doom are quite exciting. Basically, your souls are bound together in your party, which can give you access to a range of abilities that are quite exciting, whereas Doom is a mechanic that the Game Master plays that affects the sense of peril, I guess, that's building in the world around you, and that affects how difficult your enemies are. But again, with all things in role-playing games, they're tools that are there to use or ignore. If you don't like the sound of being tied into a narrative where you're sharing your soul with someone else, then by all means just miss that out. Now, there are examples of freeform character creation. You can create your own archetypes, and there are rules on how to do that. Personally, I think it would have been better if the game had had more archetypes from the offset. But yeah, you get your species bonus. If I talk about the Stormcast, for example, if you don't know about the Stormcast, they're essentially immortal warriors who've been reforged by the God King Sigmar. Every time they die, they kind of warp back up to the heavenly realm as a bolt of lightning. They get remade again in this excruciating process called being reforged. But something I love about their character in this game is when you're creating your character as their unique species bonus, you roll a dice. That tells you how many times you've been reforged. If you roll a 6, you add that result and roll again, and you keep going. And yeah, it's just a really neat little narrative hook for your character, especially because with a Stormcast, every time you are reforged, you forget a little bit about your former self. So I know that amnesia has been done quite a lot in Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing, but I think it's a fascinating way to make your character exciting. They give you some amazing different tips as well as to making your character unique and interesting, such as maybe tattooing different things on your body so that every time you're reforged, you can slightly remember who you were. But again, with a Stormcast, essentially they can't die. If they're defeated in battle and killed, they just basically end up going back to the Heavenly Realm and being reforged. But that can take anywhere from hours to weeks, so obviously the Game Master can decide when you can return. Maybe you'd have to make a second character in the meantime before you could return to that character. Maybe they'd just let you return really quickly. But loads of really cool narrative things. There are loads of ways you can bring your character to life, ways you can connect yourself to other characters. I know that this same thing was in the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game, but they do the 10 questions which ask you like, what's your worst fear? Who's your greatest ally or best friend? But there are some amazing ways to add depth to your character. There are tables for choosing your height, your eye colour, your hair colour, whether you have any unique traits. It's amazingly well done. Now, what I did to get myself familiar with the game is I made myself a Sylvaneth Kurnoth hunter, and Stormcast Eternals can't be part of the Soulbound mechanic, so I thought it'd be interesting to pick a character that could be. This is essentially the first thing you are going to come across. So me being me and trying to be really organised, what I did is I put all of the information that I thought I'd need for my character together on one page. You start off with your body, mind and soul attributes. The most important for me as a Kurnoth Hunter is my body and my mind. My body is what's going to determine my defense and my attack. My mind is going to affect my ballistic skill. As my species is Sylvaneth, I get a species bonus. I've already talked about the reforged one from the Stormcast Eternals, but for the Sylvaneth you basically come with inbuilt armor. Being an armor value of 2, that basically counts as if you have medium armor naturally built in, and if it gets damaged you can rest and it will grow back. So that's pretty cool, and being Sylvaneth it therefore bans you from wearing any other armor. Now the next thing you do is you choose whether you want to focus your core skill on ballistic skill or weapon skill. Now this was something I thought was a little bit disappointing, that Kurnoth Hunters have great bows which are absolutely enormous, bearing in mind that a Kurnoth Hunter is around 10 feet tall and their bow's probably close to being that big, and they are firing these branch-sized arrows that are absolutely devastating. So when I found out that their great bow just counts as an ordinary bow, I was a little bit disappointed with that, and for the sake of them just adding something different to a standard bow which would have taken them, I don't know, 5 minutes, that was disappointing. So I decided I'd focus on having a great sword or a great scythe. So I think I went for the great scythe with my character. So you get a bow anyway, you can choose whether you have a great sword or a great scythe, and you get 280 drops of essentially what is money. So if I was going to focus on a close combat weapon, it made sense to make my core skill the weapon skill. Then you get 6 XP with this particular character that you can spend on any other skill you want. The ones that I went for are the ones in red around here. You also have a core talent. In this case it's my ancestral memories. This is only something that a Kurnoth Hunter can have, but again it's absolutely amazing. It gives me access to improved training or focus in one of my skills. Then I have a choice of 2 different talents. The 2 that I ended up going for are these 2 down here. But yeah, basically there was a lot of space to customize the character in the way I wanted to. So if I go across to the character creation sheet, I had 4 in body, 3 in mind, and I think soul was 1. Now with my core skill being weapon skill, it meant I got training and focus in that by default. Now what is training? It means you basically get an extra dice in your pool when you're trying to do something. In this case, if I'm attacking, because attacking is governed by my body, I would roll 4 dice to attack, and because I have 1 training, I would roll an extra dice. So down here for my weapon, I'm going to roll 5 dice for my great scythe. I've also got focus 1 in my weapon skill. What focus does is allows you to add 1 to a dice roll. So if I need a 4 to succeed with a hit, and I've only rolled a 3, I can spend my focus to turn the 3 into a 4. Now my character came with 6 XP to spend on anything I wanted, so I thought I would spend it on awareness, fortitude, might, nature, reflexes and stealth. If I had have wanted to, I could have spent some of that XP on making my weapon skill even higher, but to go up a level costs even more XP, so it would cost me 2 XP to go to weapon skill training level 2. But what I ended up finding was by going for such a diverse skill set, it actually ended up making some of my other attributes, such as my initiative, my armor, my metal and my toughness, even higher. But the way that attacking works in the game is in the character creation section, it tells you how to work out, for example, your attack score. So it says in this case, add your body plus your training level in weapon skill, and then you check your result on a ladder. I'll explain what that means in a second. So in this case, I've got 4 body, 1 level of training, so my number for my attack is going to be a 5. If you then look at the ladder, it says that 5 means I'm well trained, so I've got a rating of good in my attack skill. So I just go along to my attack skill and give myself a rating of good. Now in this case, I think my defense was also good, whereas my range was average. What's quite good though is when you're creating my character, had I wanted to focus on range, you're actually allowed to swap any 2 of these attributes around. So I could have swapped the 4 and the 3, and therefore my mind skill would have been better, and I could have then given myself a focus and ballistic training, which would have meant I was far better at shooting. But how does the combat work? It's quite simple actually. You compare your attack skill with the defense skill of a target. So if you look at a Blood Reaver, he doesn't have any wounds because he's not very strong, but you have to get through his toughness first. So with his toughness of 6 and a defense of being average, my weapon skill is good, whereas his defense is only average. Because I'm 1 step higher than his defense, it means I only need to roll a 3 in order to damage him. Now, I said earlier that my dice pool for an attack is going to be 5 dice because I've got 4 in my body and 1 in my weapon skill. So if I made an attack against a Reaver, I would roll 5 dice and I would be looking at 3s to be successful. So here we go, let's roll 5 dice. I would need 3s to be successful, so in this case 1, 2, 3 of them are successful, and then I can spend 1 focus to turn this 2 into a 3, which means 4 of my dice would have been successful. Now when it comes to calculating the damage, this particular weapon has 1 plus S damage, and in fact if I had have given him a great sword, the damage is 2 plus S. S is the number of successful rolls you've made. So because I have 4 successful rolls and I'm adding 2 to that damage, it means that that roll would have given me 6 damage. So now that I know that I've inflicted 6 damage on him, I have to look at his armor rating. Because he hasn't got any armor rating, it means he hasn't stopped any of that damage. So 6 damage has gone straight through. Because he only has 6 toughness, he's going to lose 1 toughness for every damage. So he's actually going to, in this case, lose all of his toughness, which means in this case my Kurnoth Hunter would have wiped him out. So yeah, the game mechanics are actually quite simple. They take a little bit of reading to get your head around. There are then extra things to take into account. So for example, if I was using my scythe, that has cleave, and a cleave weapon has an additional rule. That means that for every roll of a 6, you're going to deal 1 additional damage. So looking at the dice rolls that I got, I actually would have ended up doing more damage with the scythe than I would have with the greatsword, but either way, that would have been 1 dead Blood Reaver. Right, so the game mechanics I think are pretty easy. They're quite beginner friendly. It didn't take me long to create my character. It didn't take me long to get my head around what I was doing. The other thing that I really liked was all of the different archetypes and species feel very different from one another. So for example, if you are playing the Caradron Overlord and they're using their athematic stuff, their rig that their weapons are plugged into have a certain amount of charge, which determines how much equipment they can use. But yeah, I love the archetype mechanic. I like the game mechanics. The character building was great fun, especially coming up with the backgrounds and the guidance they give you on that. The Soulfire and Doom mechanics seem very good to bring your party members together, but obviously you can take or leave it. It's accessible. The setting's amazing. The lore is amazing. Let's really quickly finish the video off, because it's probably been quite a long video by now, on some of the negatives. So first of all, although the lore section is amazing, I do wish that maybe they'd given you a map of a city. I know that we're going to have a starter set coming out for Soulbound, so I'm going to assume that there could be some settlement maps involved there. But yeah, I've been saying on my channel for a long time that I want to know what it feels like to live in one of these realms and actually feel like a real character in the Age of Sigmar setting. And this is undoubtedly the best attempt that has come towards that aim so far. In terms of the rules, sometimes they are spread all over the place. So if I go back to the contents, for example, when I was trying to work out how to make an attack, for example, it said, right, I've got to go to page 145, making attacks. I go to page 145 and it says, making an attack, make a body weapon skill test. And then I'm thinking, okay, I haven't looked up how to do the different tests. So I have to go all the way back to the contents, and then I have to go to the page on tests. So I've got to go to a page 123 now. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so you get 1 dice per body score, and then another dice for whatever level of training I've got. And then it was little things like when I was looking at the equipment and the armor, it didn't list natural armor, which is what the Sylvaneth get. They're minor little things, but you will be hopping backwards and forwards throughout the book quite a lot. That's why I would say if you have the PDF version, just put in all the information on one page. Or what I initially did is I actually just literally wrote down what the different abilities were, what my species bonus was, all of these different things I wrote down, made notes on, pulled all the information together to build the character I wanted to. But yeah, the archetypes, although they're amazing and they make the game really accessible, there is a downside to that, and that's that I can't just be the character that I want to be. I have to be one of these ones, unless obviously I'm going to design my own one. But I came into this role-playing game thinking, right, I want to be a wood elf, and I couldn't be a wood elf. So I thought, okay, I'll be a Grunstock Thunderer, and I couldn't be a Grunstock Thunderer. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to be a normal human soldier from one of the Free Guild cities, and guess what? You couldn't be one of those either. So sure, I can design all those characters, I can make the stats up myself, there are guidelines on how to do that, but I would prefer that they were just in the game. And if you've got 65 odd pages worth of different classes that you can use in Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game, then I feel like having 23, I think there are in this book, is on the small side. And I guess the only other thing is that whilst I was going through, I noticed in some of the rules sections there were very definitely spelling mistakes or grammatical errors. Some of them are quite minor, like one Stormcast Eternals rather than one Stormcast Eternal may have been plucked from the Age of Chaos. Some of them seem a little bit more major, like for example here, there's a random sentence that just starts with "and a shield and common light or medium armor," and no amount of reading that sentence will make that make sense. You can choose 2 common weapons or a common weapon and a shield, and common light or medium armor, and a shield and common light or medium armor. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's basically that bit there has just duplicated itself, I believe. Yeah, but there were other small spelling mistakes I found throughout as well. It's not a deal breaker, it's not a massive issue, but I wish they'd have taken a little bit more care with the editing. But yeah, overall, I really recommend this. It's great fun. I can't wait to get into a game of this. And I think that's pretty much it I want to say for this video. I've probably ranted for more than long enough. But yeah, I think I've given you a good idea of some of the positives, some of the negatives, some of my own experiences with role-playing games. And yeah, a rough idea of how character creation and some of the mechanics work in terms of attacking. But yeah, thank you very much for watching my video. Don't forget to like this video if you thought it was any good. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And yeah, otherwise I will see you guys really soon.